A woman in modest clothes and a boy of about 8 years old were walking together in the public garden on the way to the school. The woman was about 30 years old, but she had no makeup on her face and was dressed in simple cheap clothes, so it was hard to tell her age. The boy who worked beside her was also modest, neat, and focused on his thoughts. They didn't talk to each other on the way, but it was the kind of silence that usually indicates a perfect understanding, even without words. The school they were heading to was the most prestigious in the city, and the teachers were used to seeing the children of wealthy and powerful parents in this school. But the woman and her son worked there confidently, not worrying that the staff of this prestigious school would not let them in. This confidence made the guard confused. He was about to ask them what they were doing here, but for some reason, he remained silent and only stared at the visitors unhappily. "Hello. Please tell us how to get to the principal's office." The woman asked him softly but with dignity. "But why did you come here?" the guard asked rudely. "We have recently moved to this neighborhood, and I want to transfer my son to this school." The woman continued calmly. "A lot of people want to transfer their kids to this school." The guard grinned. "But not everyone succeeds because it's the best school in the city. Maybe you should go straight to the regular school nearby." "Let me decide for myself where I should go," the strange visitor replied, softening her voice even more. "Please tell me where the principal's office is. It would not be right for us to look for the principal all over the school. And you have no right or reason not to let us in. Go straight through the hall, along the students' lockers, then turn left. You need a second door," the guard said angrily, unable to find a reason for the conflict. "But I'm not sure the principal will have time to talk to you today." "Thank you," the woman replied, ignoring his unpleasant tone, and taking the boy by the hand, went off to find the office. The principal's reception room greeted them with a leather couch and the ajar door of the principal's office, the voices of the conversations echoing from behind it. "Mr. Walker, we are very grateful to you for accepting our son Derek into your school. Studying at this school is top-notch, and now I am confident for his future university enrollment." A confident male voice sounded. "Well, there is still a long time before university. The boy is only 8 years old. Although I'm sure that the son of such a powerful father will not disgrace the family," the principal said sweetly. "We need such children, and will always find a place for them in our school." After a short goodbye, a man in an expensive suit left the office, and then the woman and the boy went through the door, which was still open. The principal glanced at them, quickly removed the white envelope lying on top of the folders left by the man, and said sternly, "How can I help you?" "Hello." The visitor's voice was still quiet and soft. "We recently moved to this neighborhood and would like to transfer to your school." "Really?" the principal said in surprise. "And what makes you think this school has available places?" "You just said so yourself to a previous visitor," the woman replied. "Well, that's not what I meant." The principal laughed. "By the way, what do you do for a living?" "I have the most ordinary profession. I am an accountant." "You have an ordinary profession and an ordinary child. But our school is actually only for gifted children. In order to get into this school, students have to pass a series of difficult tests. I think you'd better go to a nearby school down the street. They have a shortage of students. I think they'll accept your son right away." "But I have a gifted child. He got a letter of commendation for excellent academic achievement, and for winning the city contests for the best drawing and the best essay. He has the right to be among your gifted students." The mother's voice began to raise, and there was an angry tone in it. "Well, I'm not sure your son will be attending this school." The principal straightened up, signaling that the conversation was over. "I strongly advise you once again to go to another school and ask you to leave my office. I have a lot of work to do. You are denying us the opportunity to attend this school for no reason," the woman said, raising her voice. "And you are discrediting my child for no reason." The principal, sighing, pressed the security button and said, "Matt, I need your help. A woman refuses to leave and won't let me work. She's also talking to me in a rude way. Realizing that the same guard who had tried to humiliate her at the entrance was about to show up in the principal's office, the woman looked at the principal with anger in her eyes and left the office without saying anything. When she bumped into the guard in the reception area, she silently bypassed him and headed for the exit. Some people are so insolent, the principal summarized the situation in happily. They think that they are smarter than everyone else, and he carelessly put the white envelope in the drawer of his desk. A few days later, a phone call rang in the silence of the principal's office. Mr. Walker picked up the receiver, and his face changed instantly. "Yes, Alexander, I'm listening," the principal said with a serious face. "Mr. Walker, our philanthropist Rachel is coming to your school tomorrow. She will oversee all the city schools, gyms with exercise equipment, computer labs, and other modern innovations for the education system. She will arrive at your office around 11 o'clock. Please welcome her properly. This is our new partner, Helen." The principal's voice sounded loud and demanding, and a young assistant instantly came to his shout. "The mayor called. We have an important guest coming tomorrow at 11 o'clock. It concerns charity matters. We have to prepare the meeting in the best possible way." The next day, at 11 o'clock, the assistant informed the principal that Rachel had arrived. A young woman in an elegant green suit and beige blouse showed up at the office, and her perfect python skin shoes and clutch bag completed the sophisticated look. Her brown curls were neatly styled, but her gaze was stern and formal. "Hello, Mr. Walker. May I come into your office?" "Yes, of course." The principal rose from his desk, staring intently at his guest and trying to understand why her face seemed so familiar to him. "I think you have already been informed of the purpose of my visit to the school. I want to check out the material base of this educational institution and outline your priority needs. I would like to pay special attention to the inclusive form of education. My main opinion is that education should be available to everyone, regardless of the health condition or financial situation of students and their parents. Do you agree with me on this?" The principal remained silent. He finally recognized in this stylish, well-dressed woman a poor, modest mother who had tried to transfer her son to this school. "So she decided to test me," the principal thought to himself. "If I had known who she was, I would have accepted her son into my school. But she came dressed like a beggar and didn't say a word about who she was. This beggar decided to set me up, and now she's smiling wickedly. Why aren't you answering, Mr. Walker? Or have you already realized that my son will attend this school? But the principal will be different." Mr. Walker looked at her angrily and silently began to put his papers together on his desk. The woman looked at him indifferently. "I've seen your employment history. There's information about your business experience. I think you could use it now because this school needs a different principal, and the kids need a different approach." With these words, Rachel left the office, leaving behind the smell of expensive perfume and a scolding principal. A couple of hours later, Rachel was sitting in her office, stirring her already cold coffee with a spoon. All the visits and meetings for today were over, and it was time to think about personal matters. At the moment, the most important matter on her mind was the upcoming reunion. Rachel didn't really want to go to this event. Probably, she was destined to get not the best impressions about school. She had suffered humiliation at school when she was a child, and now the principal, who was only thinking about financial benefits, didn't want to accept Max into the school. For her, school was still the most unpleasant place to be. It's been a long time, and she's already become a successful, wealthy woman. But memories from her past keep popping up again and again in her mind, reminding her to think about herself. After all, it was these memories that made her pretend to be a beggar who wanted to transfer her talented son to a good school. The woman didn't want him to end up in a society of greedy, arrogant people and become the same. If she had asked to accept Max into this school today, while showing off her position and financial status, the principal would have accepted him without hesitation. But no, she needed to find out everything about this school. If you can't change the system, you have to try to remove at least a small link from it. Perhaps those who have not experienced such grief will never understand it, but she did. Her life was changed forever by an accident when a huge truck, whose driver lost control, hit her young parents who were riding their bicycles on the side of the road. Her father died instantly, and her mother was saved, but her appearance was completely changed. Rachel could hardly remember her mom's real face, which looked at her from old photos. She only remembered what the doctors managed to save. The girl's first childhood shock happened when, instead of her slender, cheerful mother, an unfamiliar woman in a wheelchair entered the apartment, and only her unforgettable voice allowed the girl to recognize in this woman her beloved mom. Then her mother went blind and became even more helpless than her little daughter. Thankfully, Lucy, their neighbor, was a kind woman and helped out around the house. There was no one else to help. Mom's parents died long ago, and Dad's parents were very old and lived on the other side of the country. So, little Rachel had to grow up very quickly. Mom was sick and miserable, but her mindset helped her survive. She did almost impossible things to avoid bothering others. She learned to navigate the apartment and do most of the household chores by touch, learned to control her disobedient and immobile body, and even learned to laugh and joke again. However, often, she cried quietly, locking herself in her room. The school was another tough ordeal for the child. While she was in elementary school, everything was normal. None of the children understood why Rachel didn't stay to play after classes, but immediately went home. Then, instead of watching cartoons, the girl went to the grocery store or the pharmacy. The kids just didn't pay attention to it. But Rachel still couldn't understand why none of the teachers tried to explain to her classmates the tragedy that had happened in Rachel's family. But everything was pretty clear. This world is becoming more and more selfish every day, and no one cares about other people. Besides, the girl is doing well in her studies and does not give her teachers any reason to worry. As the harsh and ruthless adolescence approached, the situation at school began to escalate. Teachers put a straight-A student as an example to other children, so her classmates didn't like her. She seemed to them too diligent and aloof. And lately, she started coming to school in old, worn-out clothes. The explanation was simple. It was clear that the family had no money to buy new clothes. But in childhood, there were no fashion trends, and family friends often gave good clothes for Rachel. But this period was over. Now people would rarely give their family some clothes, and those clothes were more worn and out of fashion. Rachel gradually gained a reputation as a beggar. At that time, there were no famous words about school bullying, but that didn't change the meaning of what was happening. The constant insulting jokes and nicknames became more and more cruel, especially when her classmates found out that she was helping a lame janitor Arthur after school. Arthur was another kind person she had met in her life. People in difficult situations are usually more willing to help others than well-to-do people. Arthur, who had no home or family and could barely do the hard work of a janitor because of an injury, always tried to help the smart girl and her sick mom in any way he could. Rachel thought that just accepting help was not right, so she began to help Arthur sweep the yard. At first, the man refused, but later he said that his job was now simplified and that any labor should be paid for. The offer was logical, and since then, the girl has always received a few banknotes once a month. Her classmates didn't immediately notice Rachel cleaning the yard. They all liked to sleep, and she would come to help Arthur around 5 in the morning. But one day, everything coincided. She stayed at work longer than usual, putting fallen leaves in bags, and Jeremy's dog asked to go for a walk at a surprisingly early time. So, that day, the students forgot about everything in the world. They only discussed Rachel and mocked her. Rachel heard a lot of disgusting things that day, from harmless insults to hurtful humiliations. Unfortunately, children can be very cruel. She wanted to cry loudly, but she couldn't. She tried not to cry at school, so as not to give a reason for more humiliation. And at home, so as not to upset her mother. Rachel tried to keep her mom safe from this mess by telling her about the friendly school, the wonderful classmates, and the happy school life. She couldn't do it any other way. Otherwise, her mother would cry again from helplessness, and then she would be silent for several days and refuse to eat. Therefore, the girl said that she loved her happy school life and her classmates. Rachel was sipping cold coffee, and the memories of her difficult and half-forgotten childhood suddenly came back to her mind. Adam was the only one who wasn't afraid to break the judgment when Rachel wasn't allowed to attend the physical education class because she didn't have a sports uniform. The old sneakers had become hopelessly small over the summer, and she had managed to save money for new ones by saving cents on school lunches and saving money that Arthur had given her. But there was only enough money for sneakers. The tracksuit had to be replaced with jeans and a t-shirt. But the teacher didn't like that. Mr. Parsons, a retired military man who became a physical education teacher, remained reverent about the uniform. "Rachel, what are you wearing? Where's the uniform?" She heard a stern question from the teacher. Shrugging her shoulders, the girl continued to stand in a row of classmates who were making fun of her as usual. "Take 2 steps forward," Mr. Parsons commanded in a military manner. Rachel obeyed and stepped out from the row of students. "So, Rachel, explain. Where is your sports uniform?" the teacher inquired. "I'm wearing sneakers." The girl tried to justify herself. "That's great. Except how are you going to do high jumps and stretching in jeans? Or do you think you're going to sit on the bench?" Mr. Parsons jabbed his finger at her jeans dismissively. "I can do all the exercises in jeans too," Rachel said confidently. "I'll be the one to decide if you can do the exercises or not," Mr. Parsons stated and added, "Get out. I'll allow you to exercise when you come dressed in your sports uniform." With her head down, Rachel walked out of the gym to the laughter of her classmates and sat down on a bench in the hallway. She realized that she probably wouldn't be able to find a uniform. She had to save money for it for at least 3 months, and she didn't want to get a bad grade in physical education for skipping classes. Not finding a way out of the situation, the girl hugged her backpack and cried. "Why are you crying?" She heard someone's voice above her head and looked up. She saw Adam, a C student who skipped class from time to time. "Mr. Parsons kicked me out of the gym," Rachel sobbed. "He told me not to come to the gym without a uniform. That's it. So why are you crying? Next time you'll come in your sports uniform. And in the meantime, we can go to the store for ice cream." "What ice cream? What uniform? What are you talking about?" Rachel replied in despair. "Where am I going to get the money for that?" The tears flowed down her cheeks again. "Okay, friend." Adam put his backpack next to Rachel on the bench. "There's no point in crying. Tears won't help in this situation. Come on, tell me, is the situation really that bad?" "Very bad." Rachel nodded. "I've grown a lot over the summer, and I can't buy everything at once. I'm not promising you a new uniform, but I'll ask my sister to give you some sweatpants. She bought new ones. I'll ask her to give you the old ones if she wants me not to tell our parents she's going on dates instead of going to classes," Adam said confidently, and patted Rachel on the shoulder. "But now let's go get some ice cream. I'll pay." From that day on, they began a childhood friendship, which gradually developed into their first love. Adam brought the sweatpants along with some other clothes from his sister's closet and came to the physical education class to argue with the teacher if necessary. But there was no need to argue. The teacher was satisfied with the sweatpants and allowed Rachel to do high jumps. Adam obviously liked to help the girl, and from that day on he began to support Rachel in everything. He scolded classmates who insulted her, silently put pies from the school canteen in her backpack, and sometimes waited for her in the schoolyard to go home together. The boy turned out to be quite an interesting interlocutor, having his own opinion on everything, not always coinciding with the pedagogical opinion, and absolutely not afraid of the consequences in real life. With him, Rachel became more calm and confident, and her classmates, seeing that now there was someone to stand up for the girl, stopped bullying her. The time of graduation had come, and it came along with a lot of worries. Her grades were still excellent, but preparing for the prom was a real problem. She had no money for presents for the school, teachers, and for the party. Rachel was not going to the party, realizing that nobody except Adam would invite her to dance or would be happy to meet the sunrise with her. But she really wanted to get her diploma in a beautiful dress. However, no one could help her in this. Not even Adam's sister. She did not wear dresses at all, having in her closet only a variety of pants and suits. So on the day of graduation, Rachel asked the principal to give her diploma before the celebration part. And, after coming home, she lay down on the bed in her room and buried her face into the pillow. At about 9 o'clock in the evening, someone threw a small pebble at her window. Looking out of the window, she saw Adam in a gray suit. "Let's go watch the sunrise together," the guy suggested. "But what about the party?" Rachel asked, realizing that Adam wasn't going back to the party. "Everyone is still in the restaurant, already drunk as if it wasn't prom. But the last day of their lives," Adam replied mockingly, and added, "Take your jacket with you. We are going to go boating." It was an unforgettable night for Rachel. First, they walked along the waterfront, then kissed in an old gazebo. Early in the morning, Adam woke up the sleepy security guard at the boat station, gave him some money, and asked him to let them go boating. They watched the sunrise in the middle of the river, sitting in the boat pressed against each other and watching the first rose-colored rays of the sun breaking through the gloom of the passing night. At that moment, the girl was insanely happy. This kind of prom was much better than if she had gone to a party with her classmates. It was a good thing she didn't have a dress, but she had Adam, that amazing summer night, and the sunrise in a slightly rocking boat on the river. At that moment, it seemed to Rachel that all the hardest things in her life were over. Soon she would get a job. She would finally have enough money. She and Adam would live together, and maybe she would be able to enroll in university. At first, everything was really good. Adam was by her side. Rachel found a decent job as an assistant in a big company, and her mom started to feel better. But it didn't last long, because Adam joined the army, and Rachel found out that she was pregnant. This news frightened the young girl a lot. She sent a letter to the military unit with the news of her pregnancy, and sometime later, she received a reply and some money in an envelope from Adam. He said that having a baby is a wonderful thing, but in the current situation, when the father is in the army and the mother has no means of livelihood, having a baby is untimely and extremely foolish. He sent the money so she could terminate the pregnancy. Her eyes refused to believe what was written in the letter, and her brain refused to accept it all. "How can I kill our baby?" "Why?" "Because we're both young and inexperienced." "What if I don't have kids at all after that?" The questions popped up in the girl's mind. Rachel was raised by a strict and religious mother, and she couldn't make such a decision. So she frantically tried to think of something that would allow her to survive in this situation. Her boss, who had returned to the office for his phone, saw her in such a frustrated state. Shocked by the sad look of his assistant, he quietly approached her desk. She was staring at one point with her crying eyes. He carefully tapped the edge of the cup on the table with a spoon. Rachel flinched, and her boss asked her, "Are we having a war apocalypse?" When Rachel didn't get the joke, he explained, "That's the only way I can explain that look on a young and lovely girl's face." Then Rachel sharply replied that she was not a young girl, but a pregnant woman, who would soon cease to be lovely, and that Richard should look for a new assistant because soon she would become unsuitable for this job. The emotions that came out provoked the girl, and she became hysterical. Richard let her cry, and then, when he saw that the situation was getting worse, slapped her cheeks and poured cold water on her head from a glass to calm the assistant's unnatural laughter. "Richard, that day you returned to the office just in time," Rachel murmured, and in a burst of emotion she clutched her coffee spoon so tightly that it bent. Memories of her late husband immediately reflected in the form of a sharp pain in her heart. Today's Rachel is the result of Richard's love, understanding, and his hard work. He was the one who helped her at work back then by raising her salary and paying bonuses. He was the one who drove her to the doctors and picked her up from the maternity hospital when Max was born. He was the one who bought her son presents and moved her into his house after her mother died. Richard was the one who forced her to study at the university. He explained the nuances of his business as if he had a premonition of his own death. It's unclear how the girl managed to survive such grief. An unknown vehicle hit Richard's car and quickly drove off in an unknown direction, leaving him rolling down a cliff in a flaming car. His competitors managed to get a big project at the cost of Richard's life. But thanks to Richard's loyal employees and friends, the company survived. By the way, if Richard were alive, he'd be scolding Rachel for such introspection. After all, he had done everything possible to get her to stop being a frightened girl. Ashamed of her poverty, she placed the bent spoon on the table and made a decision. Rachel found the contacts of the restaurant she was invited to for the reunion and made a phone call. "Hello, is this the restaurant? Could you please tell me if anyone has already paid for the party scheduled for the 25th? No. Send me the receipt, please. I'll pay for it. Thank you." Well, the first part of the plan is done. It's time for the most interesting part of the plan. She wondered who even came up with the idea of inviting her to the reunion, since she was the outcast. Apparently, Adam would be there on the appointed date. The former graduates, and now men and women who had already achieved something, were chatting cheerfully in the luxurious restaurant. The conversations were lively, and their gazes were evaluating. Everyone was interested to know who had achieved what over the past years, and to see how much the boys had matured and whether the girls had aged. By the beginning of the party, Rachel was not there yet. However, no one cared much, except for a young blonde-haired man in a jacket who kept glancing at the door, but carefully hid it from the others. In the middle of the discussion about who was the wealthy philanthropist who had paid for their party, a strange noise was heard outside, which was getting louder by the second. The concerned classmates rushed to the windows and saw a helicopter about to land on an equipped landing pad for VIP guests. "Okay, I think we're all about to find out who this kind person is." Tiffany, who was always making arguments and bullying her classmates at school, said. The helicopter landed on the pad. A door opened, and a slender woman with brown hair stepped out. The stranger headed towards the restaurant entrance, and the curious eyes of the guests could see her nice hairstyle, her elegant pink dress, and the delicate expensive shoes on thin heels glimmering from under the dress. "Who the hell is that?" Tiffany said in surprise, not noticing that her former beloved Adam was staring at the stranger, barely swallowing saliva in shock. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman entered the restaurant and held out her arms to her classmates as she approached them. "Well, hello friends. Don't you recognize me?" A heavy, tense silence filled the restaurant. Some people still didn't recognize her. Others had already realized who this lady was and were trying to process the information. "Rachel." Tiffany was the first to speak. "Did you rob a bank?" "Well, in this case, I'd probably be wanted and wouldn't show up at the reunion." Rachel laughed softly. "Why are you all standing around? The table is already fully set." The silent crowd began to take their seats at the tables, trying to process the shocking news. The party continued in total silence. No one knew what to say or what to do. Stories of their own achievements seemed pathetic compared to the incredible transformation of poor Rachel into a lady of high society. Then Rachel decided to break the long silence. She raised her glass and started. "I regret that I didn't get to the very beginning of our reunion in time to hear what you said about your 10 years of life after high school, but I hope to hear it again today. But let me tell you about myself. First, I sincerely want to thank all of you for the cruelty and bullying I had to endure as a child. Such a school of life gave me the strength to withstand the intrigues of competitors after the death of my husband, to overcome this tragedy with dignity, not to get lost and not to stop fighting, but to stubbornly continue the business started by him and even to achieve top results in it. Yes, I am a widow now, but I have a wonderful son who will be attending our school soon. I have the opportunity to help our school and many other schools. Every experience is priceless, even the negative experience, and I am grateful to all of you for being my teachers without realizing it. I want to congratulate all of you and wish you strength and aspiration in achieving your goals. May your goals always be important and worthy, and make this world a little better. Rachel was drinking champagne when suddenly there was a quiet clapping of some people, then more clapping. And suddenly all of the previously cruel and unfriendly classmates were applauding the fragile woman in the pink dress, who was still holding a glass of champagne, feeling embarrassed. The atmosphere in the restaurant relaxed. They started talking about the past again, and Rachel, finishing her glass of champagne and leaning back in her chair, realized that she had achieved this goal. The music started playing, and Adam approached her table, inviting her to a slow dance. One more round. Rachel fought and went to dance. How old is your son? Adam asked, not being able to stand the silence. Almost 9 years old. Rachel didn't bother to lie to her ex-lover. So you didn't terminate the pregnancy then? Why, you know, at my home, we didn't even like to kill flies and mosquitoes, let alone babies. My mom and I would just open all the windows, and the flies would fly away with the wind. Honestly, I don't really understand how it is possible to kill a part of yourself, although I have seen a lot of terrible things in my life. By the way, I'm also very grateful to you for that letter with the money. If it hadn't been for that letter, I would never have known that there could be a very strong and loving man in my life. Even though we lived together for a very short time, I will keep this memory as the brightest and dearest memory of my life. I'd like to see my son, Adam muttered, staring at the floor, hesitant to raise his eyes to Rachel. Why? He loves and remembers his father, and your appearance in his life won't change anything. He, unlike me, won't forgive you once he learns the truth. Do you want to teach him to hate? I can't let you do that. You made your choice a long time ago, and you must take responsibility for every choice. Rachel, I never managed to forget you. Adam's voice was husky and weak. I'm the one who found you to invite you to this reunion. Adam, I understood that it was you who invited me here. Rachel suddenly felt how tired she was and how unnecessary this conversation and Adam's remorse was. But we can't start all over again. My feelings for you disappeared when I read your letter. I hope you can understand me. Don't be mad. I should probably go home. I have paid for the restaurant. Have fun as much as you want. But I have to go to work tomorrow again, to inspect schools. Goodbye, Adam. With those words, Rachel headed for the exit with a light heart. I've accomplished that goal, too, she said to herself as she stepped outside and breathed in the fresh evening air.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.